You're listening to the Gate of Trust podcast. Join hosts Matt Trush and Felix Friedberg's heart-to-heart conversations with artists, entrepreneurs, scholars, and laymen who, by strengthening their trust in God despite all odds, experience outright miracles. Trusting in God can literally save lives. And now, Gate of Trust podcast hosts Matt and Felix.
Hi, I'm Matt.
And I'm Felix, and this
is the Gate of Trust podcast.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, Felix. You sound a little down.
Well, I was really struggling for a joke today, so I got desperate, and I had to phone a friend. He didn't even have a joke. All he had was a riddle.
Just a riddle? So what's the riddle, Felix?
All right, Matt. Well, there's a rooster sitting on the roof facing east, and he lays an egg. Which way does the egg roll?
I don't know, Felix. Which way?
Matt, roosters don't lay eggs.
Well, I do know somebody in the roofing business. On today's Gate of Trust podcast, we speak with Howard and Claire Glowinsky, who are friends, subscribers, and supporters of Chayenu, and they're also Gate of Trust pioneers. Howard and Claire figuratively gave birth to the Gate of Trust's first weekly appearance in Chayenu, which has taken the world by storm. Howard is a businessman, philanthropist, and scholar, and extremely humble. His Eishes Chayil, Claire, is practical, sensitive, and determined to bring the Gate of Trust to the literal and spiritual lone soldiers of the world.
I'm ready, Matt, to get inspired by today's Gate of Trust podcast.
Let's hear from the wonderful Howard and Claire Glowinsky. Howard and Claire Glowinsky, welcome to the Gate of Trust podcast.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Happy to be here.
Howard and Claire, I understand you two gave birth to the Gate of Trust project. So tell me, how did it all start? How did your interest or your involvement with the Gate of Trust project all begin?
It goes back a little ways. We connected with Chayenu, I'm going to say it's about 5-6 years ago when I started committing to daily Chitat study. And the last piece of the puzzle for me was to start learning Tanya. I started in Kuntras Acharon. It just so happened the time of the year. It was very, very difficult for me, as it is for most people. And I really couldn't understand it. So I think I reached out to Yossi Pelz at the time. I said, first of all, I love the Chayenu and I'm happy to be part of it, but this is too esoteric for me. I struggle with it. I think it was the Baal Shem Tov who said that the parts of Torah that you find are beyond you are the parts that you're meant to study and break your head over. And those are the ones that you have affinity for. So I struggled with it. And he said to me at the beginning of the new cycle, Yutet Kislev, he said he will set me up with a chavrusa. And my chavrusa ended up being Yitzhak Yarmish, our beloved compiler of the Chavas Alovas book. And we've become very close over the last 5-6 years that we've been studying together twice a week over WhatsApp.
Amazing. Well, when we talked about having this discussion today, you said I can't have any talk about the Gate of Trust or any of the good things that I do without my Eshet Chayil, because I don't do anything alone. In fact, she's my better half. So yes. Eshet Chayil, tell us a little bit about how you are involved with and supporting or really leading all the good things that are happening with Gate of Trust and all the good things you all are doing.
So Howard is the one who is a few rungs ahead of me on the escalator, and he often is also the one who gets approached when there's an opportunity. Every time there's an opportunity to do something that he thinks would interest us as a family, we sit down, we have a discussion about it. And this one really piqued both of our interest. We really identified with the subject matter and something that we just really thought was a very worthwhile project.
For sure.
So if I could go back a little bit in the story and ask, so you were learning Tanya, you started the new cycle of Tanya with Rabbi Yarmush. At what point did you get interested in trust itself, in the content of the Gate of Trust?
Okay, so sorry, I realized I left out some details of the story, how we got from Tanya to Chavas Alovas. So I started becoming in more regular contact with Yossi Pelz, and certainly I was speaking to Yitzchak twice a week, and still do most weeks. And they would tell me the projects they're working on, the idea, the novelties, he was always looking to expand, and they're always looking to come up with new, wonderful things, and I applaud them for it. Anyone who doesn't have a Chayenu subscription yet, please consider getting one. It's a wonderful, wonderful publication.
Shameless plug.
Yeah. Anyways, Yossi approached me. He said they had this idea. They wanted to serialize the content of this book on Emunah. Ourselves were Baalei Tshuva, a little over 20 years. Really, Emunah and Bitachon is something that we never studied. It seemed like a natural fit for us to entertain such a project. When we were involved in construction at our shul, our Rabbi Mendel Kapp said to us that said there's 3 types of donors. You have early stage, mid stage, once they see the shovel in the ground, the building going up, And then you have the ones that are waiting until the end, until they can come in and sit in the sanctuary, and then they're going to come forward and donate. And back in 2009, we did see that come true. We learned from that process that it's good to be not like the Nisim and Parshat Nasoh, how they waited till the end and there was nothing left for them to donate. We like to be seed capital entrepreneurs.
You know, angel investors have the greatest return on their investments, of course. Earliest in means the greatest return on investment. For sure.
Amen.
So this is definitely one of those projects where getting in early, you can see the fruits of your labor. It started off, I understand, the serialization of the Gate of Trust. It came out weekly. You could see pieces of coming out. And then the Kahas book has come out, the beautiful white edition. And now I think they're even going to put the whole translation with all the Hasidic commentaries on the app. And of course, we've evolved to today's podcast.
And don't forget the Chabad.org. That was a big debate that Yossi and I had. He was of the opinion that we should release everything on Chabad.org, as they did with Positivity Bias. And I was not so much in favor. And I went to Mendel Lena Kahut and I said, Mendel, convince me that this makes sense, that this is not going to cannibalize sales of the book, expanding the pie, and we're not going to be taking away from something. Chas v'shalom. He convinced me, and here we are.
On the Gate of Trust podcast, we have a 25% off promo code TRUST. When you go to kahat.com, you can get the book at a big discount. It's an exclusive offer. Nowhere else can you find such an exclusive offer to get a discount on the Gate of Trust book. But when I talk to people and they're like, well, I have to get the book, I said, okay, listen, I whispered, on Chabad.org, you can find the whole book, commentaries and everything for free. Who's going to use the promo code? But on the other hand, the truth is it's such a beautiful book and people like to have things in their hand. It's the same is true with Hayenu. My wife is telling me we've had the digital app of Hayenu this year, and we're like, I miss the feeling of the paper. You know, what do you do on Shabbos?
Right, the tactile feeling.
Get them both, Matt. Invest a little bit of extra money, get them both.
Exactly, we're going to get them both. But the point is that the only issue was Seamus. You know, what do we do with this Seamus? So we have to figure out that. But it's worth it for the amount of learning that it brings to ourselves and our families and our home and all these things. So definitely Hayenu being paper in our home. And the same is true of the Gate of Trust book. So I hope everybody will enjoy both, but it shouldn't hold you back. If you have the option to go to Chabad.org and read the whole thing, it's really an incredible opportunity to read Gate of Trust. And I think it just shows two of your vision, not to mention Hayenu team, Yossi Pelz and Rabbi Yarmush and everyone on the Hayenu team wanting this to get out to the world, that this shouldn't be something limited to people who like to have a beautiful book to look at, but rather anybody, anywhere in the world has the opportunity to learn about trust. So it's really fantastic. So we've got the Gate of Trust podcast. What's next? What do you think is next? What is the next digital means or other means of getting the Gate of Trust out to the world?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm an accountant. My background is that we always talk about, well, the things we're already doing. We don't always have to look for new things. Like we just have to do the things we're already doing better. Like there's always a hidur mitzvah. That's whatever our approach is at the time. So as you are probably aware, the softcover of the book, which is our personal favorite, was printed for the Aleph Institute. And it's gone out to inmates in prisons, and it's gone out to soldiers, both in North America and as well in Israel. I want to translate the book to Hebrew. I've been talking to Yossi about that, Ivrit Kala, so that the Israeli audience can benefit from it. I mean, I know the Daily Wisdom books that my friend Rabbi Chaim Nachum Kunin puts out, they're in 7 languages already. So we've got a lot of catching up to do.
I heard about this Aleph Institute version, a softback that went to prisoners and the military. Can you tell us about that? Because that's just an incredible idea. I think you're right. You don't have to reinvent the wheel if you've got a good thing. Now, how do you just get more people to have access to it? I think. Tell us about that. That's just an incredible idea.
I'm sure you know the story about Rabbi Rubushkin. So Rabbi Rubushkin was imprisoned, and he swears by Chofetz HaLevavos that that's what took him through his incarceration, his very, very difficult time. And I know he's got lectures, and I believe his lectures are on gateoftrust.org as well. He's got a dedication in the back of this book. Somebody put in a dedication in his name. It was something that came up very late in the process. Somebody thought about doing it. They already had a connection through Chayenu's side, and Chayenu's were already being distributed through Aleph to various penal institutions and other places. And the Rebbe spoke very strongly. He didn't like the prison system. He writes about it in his commentaries and Likutei Sichos and other places. Anything like that, if it's a purpose of rehabilitating someone, improving them or whatever, it's fine. But for the punishment alone, people become more hardened criminals in prison, and it's not going to improve them. So why the Aleph Institute exists in the first place, it's actually the brother-in-law of our rabbi, Aaron Lipskar, is one of the main guys at Aleph. And he does a wonderful job, him and his team.
And just jumping off from what Howard was saying about the translation into Hebrew, once that happens, we we'd really like to see these books going onto army bases, into the hands of the soldiers. We think that's a great fit as well. Having them in English, their really only appeal is to the lone soldiers, which is great, but it would be nice to see them on the army bases available to everyone.
I have to admit that I imagined the book for the military or the soldiers that would be camouflage or something. I didn't think they would have the white book, but soft. I thought it would be camouflage and bulletproof. No?
Add to what Claire was saying. We did make a request. Claire's involved in the Canadian version of the FIDF, organization that supports the Soldiers of Israel. And we did make a push through our own organization in Canada to put a couple copies in all the synagogues on all the army bases in Israel. It's over a year already that it's been stuck with the Rabbanut of the IDF, and trying to get these things approved. These are not very easy
processes,
projects to get any liftoff on or to get buy-in. They're very, very difficult through the IDF.
Yeah, but we will keep trying.
Sara Agra.
Yes. No pain, no gain. I guess that's the simple way to put it. But the more the effort, the greater the chance for reward. Right? So you're involved in Chayenu, you're involved in Bitachon with the Shar Bitachon, this Gate of Trust book. Did it speak to you in some way? Was there some personal thing that came in your life or some stories of Bitachon that you could share that make it all worth it?
There's so many. Where to begin? So Howard mentioned that we're Balei Tshuva. And when we were stepping onto this journey, our first step was to find a new shul that we felt that we belonged to, that our kids would be happy at, that engaged them, that engaged our family. And after a pretty broad search, we found our shul that we're with now for all these years, which is a story in itself. But the challenge was we lived pretty far away from the shul. I don't know if you've been to Toronto, but the winters, they can get pretty cool, They can get pretty cool. And walking in the winter is not always fun.
Not like Puerto Rico.
Especially when you're dragging the kids,
my God.
Right. So we had these questions in our mind. How are we going to integrate with the community? If we can't get to shul, we started looking for houses in the community. We talked to the rabbi. It was a stretch for us to really try and buy a house in that community. It was a newer community. The rabbi said, if you really want to be part of the community, you really need to live close to shul, and people come to your house for Shabbos. You go to other people's it just you become integrated into the community. So we were invited to someone's house for Shabbos, one random Shabbos, while we were still in the checking out phase, trying to figure out how we would move into this community. And I can actually see it in front of me as we were walking through the park, going through our park near our house, going to these friends' house for lunch. We panned across the neighborhood, and as we were looking, we saw that there was house, one empty lot. And I said to Howard, we should call the builder. Look at that. And so we called the builder. The lot hadn't been sold. We were so excited. But again, it was a stretch for us. We didn't know how we were going to do it. And that was a big bitachon story for us, because we jumped in with both feet and we just hoped for the best. Didn't know how it would happen. We didn't know if it would be a happy ending, but we had a strange kind of a twist in business. Howard had a strange twist in business, and suddenly, as we're going through, everything became possible. We were okay, now we can do this. So did we think it was bitachon while we were going through it? We definitely jumped in with both feet, but now looking back on it, that was pure bitachon, and just one of the many examples where Hashem always gives you what you need. Thank God He made it possible for us to be in that community, and that's where we needed to be.
Amazing. Also sounds like you all made the step first, and then God showed how it's possible, right?
He split the sea.
When we talked to the rabbi, we told him that we had made a commitment. I was on the building committee or whatever, as chair of the building committee, expanding the shul. And I said to him, if we do make this step, there's not possible for us to both plunge into this new house commitment as well as honor our commitment to the shul, the pledge we made to, in which we don't pledge really for any donations. We just rather have the money set aside and and gift it when we have it. In his
Wisdom.
wonderful, gracious nature, we love Rabbi Kaplan. He said, never mind your donation. This is what you need to do for your family at the present time. Do what you have to do for your family, and you're released from your obligation.
Wow.
And because of the circumstance that Claire spoke about, we were able to not only make the move and not be burdened financially, we were also able to make the financial donation that we had committed and make everybody happy.
Amazing. You see? It's incredible. What a story. You have to take steps and leaps like that in order to merit God's miracles. You have to have that bitachon. I think first, even, lead with bitachon, and then Hashem will repay you times 10, at least.
I have a nice story to share as well. So during the development of the book of Shar Bitachon, in the words of Yossi Pels, he says, a book on bitachon is in itself a lesson in bitachon. Mm-hmm. So we started serializing the content. I was looking through my WhatsApp chat with Yossi in August of 2018. The book, it was supposed to be a year, and then they were supposed to release the book. The book didn't get released until Pesach 2021, 5781. So it was approximately 2.5 years from the date that we started serializing the content. And it was many, many, many challenges and many things that had to be overcome. And I remember speaking to Yossi on a particular day, and he had a team meeting, a planning meeting with the team that was putting the book together. And he said we were like stressed out, and he would call me and he would say, okay, it's going to be Gimel Tammuz. No, it's going to be Chav Av. No, it's going to be Chai Elul. No, it's going to be, Yutek Kislev. No, it's going to be this. It's going to be the yardstick kept moving. And okay, every time he told me, I said, okay, that's a good day. Okay, yeah, that's a good day too. Anyways, we got the book, thank God, just before Pesach. And it was great because you mentioned Seamus before. A friend of mine, a close friend at the shul, he came to bench me and he was so happy. He says, I've been holding on to my Chayenus for all this time because this is like all the serialized content. I didn't want to part with it. He says, I was waiting. I was wondering, are they ever going to make this into a book? He said, you made me and my wife so happy. So, and then I was telling Yitzhak Yarmish's story. He says, you have no idea how many people told us that story. It wasn't like one or two. He says, you heard from one, but he says, multiply it by 10 or 20 or more people. So, so they had this production meeting and they had to keep delaying the release date. And then they suddenly started laughing. One of them came to the realization that we're doing a book on bitachon. If the schedule is what it is, and if it's going to take this time, this is the time it's going to take. But one of the final steps was just amazing. We were getting to the printing, getting close to the printing. And I said to Yossi, I said, look, I haven't forced you on any issues here on this book. I said, but we must print in Israel. And I said, we were involved in a project with Chaim Nochem Kunin, his Sefer of Torah. And I said, he was sending me pictures of the printing presses in Israel. And I said, it just warmed my heart. And I said, Yossi, I'm sending you these pictures and these video clips. I said, we got to do this in Israel. I said, Torah Tziva Lanu, it's got to come from Israel. If you can support an Israeli business and you can print it on Israeli soil, like what greater bracha is there for the success of the book? Anyways, I managed to convince them, and, they took the pricing. They said, there could be a pricing. Never mind. Don't worry. Close your eyes. There's been many other things that have cost more and less and whatever. And just let's do it. So he did it in the end. As things would have it, the first edition of the book came, they printed it upside down. Like the inside of the book was like upside down from the cover, and it had to be reprinted. So
wow.
There's like a first edition somewhere where all the books are upside down. The content is upside down from the cover.
It's half price.
He said, we can't release this book. So we had to wait another, when it was ready, we had to wait another 2-3 weeks or whatever to reprint.
It's really beautiful though. The idea of wanting it to be printed in Israel and going beyond what's needed, because it could be easily done in China, right? But
China, United States were among the options. Yeah.
But Howard didn't tell you the punchline of this whole story, which was, we thought the process would take a year, and we knew that people needed this book in their lives. And what happened was the book eventually was finally ready to go into stores and release during COVID. And if we thought people needed this in their lives before COVID, this was like a necessity that, there was so much hopelessness. There was so much fear. There was, so much negativity. And we heard from a lot of people who said, this book really changed things for me. It's been such a hard time, and this is just what I needed. And so the timing was all preordained, and that's when it was supposed to happen. And, as we look back, we're like, well, we thought we were planning, but Hashem was planning. So
everything's been a time, as the Gate of Trust says, that doesn't happen earlier nor later than when God is decreed. Wow.
Yeah, so I want to Such an important lesson in and of itself, right? Because we get so caught up in trying to accelerate things in life. And just sharing these stories to remind us, no, it's always at the right time. God has the perfect timing. We just have to go with the flow. Okay, what do you need from me right now? What do you want from me, God?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
In business, I don't know if you feel the same way, but this is like one of the most important lessons. We're often in business trying to rush things, trying to get the deal done, trying to push what we want to happen. And I think the Gate of Trust really puts it into perspective. Howard, do you feel you've got similar examples of the need for bitachon in business?
I told my chavrus, I said, you must be jealous of the position that I'm in. I said, because being in business, I said, we see the hand of Hashem so many times each day when things happen. I'm going to give you like a simple example that happened on Shabbos. We had a tornado touchdown in our area. Power went out. As luck would have it, we were spared 21 hours, no power, but we were lucky we put a generator in pre-COVID. But I started getting calls from a Chabad rabbi. We're about to start one of the centers, local centers. We're roofing contractors. And he emailed Sunday morning. He said, you better come and take a look because your material is scattered all over the block. Like it blew over in the 120 kilometer plus winds. That's at ground level, but up 3 stories. Winds must have been closer to 200 kilometers an hour or whatever.
Wow.
Anyways, I went there and I did a little cleanup. There was a little bit of stuff on the ground. It took me a little while to put everything aside. And then they sent pictures this morning and I thought, wow, that was terrible. Why did that have to happen? We never really get to see the end of the story, although sometimes Hashem gives us. So today they sent an email from the site and they said, thanks for coming to do the cleanup, but there's more to clean up. And they sent pictures from the roof, which I didn't get up to the roof. There was no access. I didn't have a way to get up there. So they said, on the roof, everything was scattered around. Like all the stuff was blown around. It didn't actually blow off the roof. So, and as it would happen, when I got to the site on Sunday morning, there was a Chinese neighbor and he came outside and he said, I just wanted to let you know during the eye of the storm yesterday, I came outside, I saw the material blowing around. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to gather this all for you. And so that's what he did. He stacked it all up in piles and he made like a few piles of the material. And that's what happened. So sometimes we think the worst, you get this email, you can only imagine the worst. You get to there and you think, it's going to be a disaster. And you get there and it's like, okay, this isn't so bad. And I thanked this guy profusely. He just happened to tell me, he just happened to be standing there when I pulled up. And I said, can I give you some money? No, you're embarrassing me. Please don't give me money. Anyway, these are the things that you see, all the time.
Speaking of roosters, reminds me of a joke.
Let's hear it, Felix.
All right, a Jewish mother is setting up her answering machine. She says, for kugel, press 1. For knishes, press 2. For chicken soup, press 3. For matzo balls in the soup, press 4. If you're calling to ask how I'm feeling, you obviously have the wrong number because no one ever asks how I'm feeling. No, really, I'm fine.
I think I'd press 4 for chicken soup with matzo balls. But in the meantime, let's hear more from Howard and Claire Glowinsky.
One of the topics in Chuvas Levavos that I love is this idea of intermediaries. And I see that all the time in business. I used to be much more focused on the gatekeepers who were going to give you an answer on a go, no go on a project, green light, red light, and you'd get a yellow light or whatever. You get all these like delay, hurry up and wait. You quote and you rush and you don't know and it's going to happen and you need it and you need to start now and the crew's coming available and you're nervous and you need a place to park them and what are you going to do? And you put all this faith in the wrong place. Like you put the faith, let's say, in the intermediary or in the person who's signing the contract. I think it's the commentary of Pas Alechem in one of the sections there in Shar Bitochen. He says, we don't rely on intermediaries. And what's an intermediary? An intermediary is anyone but Hashem. But I think there's commentary in this book that says about Rabbi Yaakov Emden. He says, you still have to be thankful. It's not that we can say that we have no gratitude or that the people who are signing our contracts and giving us job awards, we got to be thankful for their effort, for their involvement. They could make it more difficult or whatever is in their control, but everything at the end of the day comes from Mina Shamayim, and we have to appreciate that. I've learned that. The first time we ever thought of doing a book, sponsoring any sefer, getting involved in any sefer, it was around the time of my son's bar mitzvah. Our second child, Benji, he's 26. So this would have been 2007, I believe. I opened an art scroll and I saw who's the guy at the top. Well, the names of the important players. The guy at the top is a guy named Meir Zlotowitz. All right, give him a call. One Sunday morning, I'm driving in my car. I get a phone call. Meir Zlotowitz. Hello. I was like, I had to pull over. I was like shocked that he actually called me back. I think I wrote him an email of an introduction. He called me back and I said, look, my son's bar mitzvah is coming up in a year or so. And I said, I don't know why. It just occurred to me that you've opened to me a window in the world that I would never have. I said, we have many clients on the right side of the Orthodox spectrum. And I said, I go into their homes and I go into their libraries and my jaw drops seeing beautiful libraries with Sfarim. And I said, and I feel a sadness inside of me, like a hole, a gaping hole, because I know I'll never understand any of these books. I would never be able to pick a book off the shelf and read it. It's a source of sadness to me. And I said, you've opened a window for me. You have no idea. And I said, first of all, you probably never spoke to anyone like me because you're probably far removed from people like me who use your books. And I said, you've opened such a window for me to allow me to learn Torah and Talmud and all these various things. I said, you've opened such a world to me that I would never otherwise have the exposure to. It was such a warm conversation. It was so warm and welcoming. In the end, we never went ahead with Art Scroll, but I never forgot that conversation. And we ended up at Kahut and we partnered with them.
Well, now, Claire and Howard, you all are opening windows for others.
Seriously.
You are the ones who are making all of this open and accessible to all those people who can benefit from it. You mentioned COVID, you mentioned business. There's so many things that having access to this translation in Chayenu or in the book or done so many things. I know it's touched our lives and it's touching so many other lives and the prisoners and the soldiers. I mean, it's really a fantastic thing that you're doing. With chapter 4, where we talk about how to manage the relationships with superiors and subordinates. And when you put your trust in one of them, we have to know and always internalize the fact that even if they do pull it off for us, it's God. He's the cause of all things. But we have to remember to thank them also. There's
Exactly.
Why do we have to thank them? Because, of course, they were part of bringing good things to you. And it's just an amazing point that God usually has good things come to you through righteous people. And very rarely does the opposite happen. So we should know that the people who are those intermediaries along the way are obviously God's messengers. And they also have a merit in the process of bringing good things to you. So although we know the Gate of Trust is born in Shemayim and it was brought down here at a certain time, but for sure, you all in your participation in bringing the Gate of Trust to the world, you all are the righteous ones who have the merit of bringing so many good things to the world.
Thank you. I don't know how righteous we are. I mean, I figure we have the easiest job of the entire team, just to sign a check. There's so many others who really deserve our gratitude for making this project come to life. We really just did the easy part, I think.
You know what? People ask me, what part of the book did you write? I said, the part of the book that I wrote was the check.
Exactly.
And the dedication to my mother
One of the
at
checks.
the back. My mother grew up without a mother. My grandmother, who I'm named after, Chanalea, but Moshe passed when my mother was only 7 years old, right after they came to Canada after the war. And very, very difficult growing up in that environment and not having a mother. My grandfather never spoke English and worked in the shmata business and as a tailor. She did an amazing job trying to help what she could at home and raising us really with no precedent to rely on, and starting in her middle of her career to go back and get a university education and doing all the things that she did. She inspires us greatly to this day, and we love her very, very much.
We do.
Wow.
That's beautiful.
So beautiful.
I want to also compliment you on your extreme modesty. You know, I think it was Rabbi Akiva who at 40 started. So you look about 40. So you've got... Starting out with the Gate of Trust and all the good learning that you do, I know on a daily basis with Chayenu, you're on your path to being the next Rabbi Akiva.
Thank you.
And you definitely have a rough, for sure.
One of the things that I treasure the most is when they started serializing in Chayenu, the Gate of Trust. Claire and I have something that we love to do. We study every Shabbos morning together, Chavrusa, before Shul. We made a point of talking about Chavos HaLevavos every Shabbos morning through the time that they serialized the content, and it was a great time. And like Getzia and Eliza were saying how they studied only a page. Just get up at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. and study a page. So that's what we would do, because it was serialized. It was a very shorter content.
Right.
We study only a section, a small portion, and we get into discussion, lively debate and discussion back and forth. And
Not at 4 a.m.
No.
But there really is something to this. I think that learning the Gate of Trust for married couples brings Shalom Bayit, brings blessings to the home. I'm happy to meet another couple that is incorporating the Gate of Trust into their lives. We just picked it up probably from Getzi and his wife, Lisa, but now we're seeing that you're also doing it. And then we tell another couple and they start doing it. And I know Felix and his wife are doing it. And so it's going to become like not only a trend of learners of the Shar B'tachon, of the Gate of Trust, but for couples, to have couples bring them closer in their bitachon is such an important part of the marriage, for sure.
Beautiful, beautiful.
As a Jewish businessman, I recognize how Gate of Trust can be so important, incorporating it in my life. I just wonder if the rest of the world also would jump on this bitachon bandwagon as well, how it would change the non-Jewish world as well.
I think the world needs it.
Examples from business. I see one of the verses that is one of my favorite in the Torah. It talks about the weights and scales, how we have to be very exacting to the Mesurah, which is a very small increment of measure when weighing or measuring and so on. And my business is construction contracting, and everything we do is based on the area. So we go out to a building or we get a set of plans, and I see the way others measure. Sometimes we have a meeting with an engineer and we go on the roof, and I see guys are not very careful. They don't care about the measurements. Okay, it's 20 feet, 6 inches. Okay, it's 21 feet or whatever. We don't do things like that. I said, no. We're going to do things exactly what they are. We're going to get the exact area. We don't round off. It doesn't work like that. It's not what we're called on to do. We have to be very exacting when it comes to measurements. And if we make a mistake, at least we show the measurement what we have. And if someone knows the measurement to be different, sometimes we're challenged on our measurements. We go back and we look, and sometimes we're wrong. Usually we have a way to back up what our measurements are, but sometimes we make a mistake. It's possible. Everybody does. And my office has learned that we're accountable. It's not something that we got. We fight and struggle with this every day, but the people around me know that this is, integrity. Like they say, when you get to Shemayim at the end of your 120 terrestrial years, please God, you're going to be asked, were you honest in business? Going to be one of the first questions, or maybe the first question you're going to be asked. I still struggle with an answer, but I'm very mindful of it. And I struggle to try to answer the question to the best of my ability, and to be careful wherever I can, where it's under my control.
For sure. A businessman with integrity is going to be more successful than one without. The Gate of Trust describes the example of walking through a desert, and you come upon bitter water and you drink your fill just to quench your thirst. And a few steps later, if you'd only gone a few more steps, you would see that there was clean, pure, crystal water, a water cooler sitting there waiting for you. And the idea is that if you know that God has already determined exactly what you're going to make this year, why drink the bitter water and get into trouble, do business on the other way, when you could do business the straight and perfect way, the kosher way, if you will, the glad kosher way, and have the same amount of parnasa. So I don't know why this came to mind, but because I don't know how God makes his calculations, of course. He didn't tell me. But let's say you had 21 and a half feet and you charged for 22 feet. And really, you're only meant to make 21 and a half feet. God forbid, who knows where the other 6 inches of extra parnasa that you would get would have to go out the door some other way, in some uncomfortable way. So it's much better to make the precise amount that you're supposed to make l'chatchila and hold on to every penny that God wants for you in health and bracha.
Amen. Amen. One of the things, as you're talking about this, it comes to mind, is my great challenge in bitachon, which I've discussed with my chavrusa, Yitzchak Yarmish, and I said to him, this idea of toil, and it actually ties into this week we're reading Parshat Bechukotai, and actually today in the daily limud we read the Tochacha, and this idea comes up in Rashi's commentary about toil and how we toil for our children. And if we're not careful, if we don't follow what God tells us to do, then we could toil for no reason. Our children may not be a source of blessing, and so on. And even the first Rashi in the Parsha says, what does it mean to walk on my statutes? It means to be toiling in Torah. And this idea of toil, I looked it up on one of the English Chavos Levavos sites that I have I bookmarked, and I put in the word toil. It came up 17 hits between the actual text of the book and the commentaries, Marpeh Lenefesh and Pasalechem and so on. I think is a very, very deep point. The question is, at what point is toil end? And is it too much? Because the Chavos Levavos says, in the 4th chapter, you're not supposed to overexert yourself. And what does that mean? There's no clear lines, and you don't always see things until, you don't know which customer is going to give you the bracha, and you're not supposed to know. It doesn't matter. It doesn't want it to be that way. We have socialized medicine in Canada. You don't have that yet in the United States. So in socialized medicine, if you're a family doctor, you get a certain amount per month. Once you see the number of patients that you have to see, if you're billing on a per patient basis, if that's the model you're under, technically you can close your office for the last week of the month, and you're going to earn the same amount of money if you stay open. You're not doing your patients a favor, but, in terms of your parnasa, you're not going to earn $1 more because the government's capped you. We're not like that. Like in business, you never know. You turn away a customer, you're not available for them. The next time they need your help, you're going to go find somebody else. So we see this idea of toil. It's clear, ever-present danger. Do I, don't I? Do I answer? Do I not answer? How far do I take this? It's 6:30 at night. I want to go home. My wife's waiting for me.
Where's the line?
Yeah, it's blurred lines are very difficult boundary lines to put. I said to Yitzhak, I said, this is like gvura. I said, like, if my nature is to try to help people and I'm coming at it from a perspective from the right side, I said, it's hard to bring the left side into the equation. I said, maybe I'm not a Tiferet individual. I'll try to come at it from the right side of the equation, not so much the left side if I don't have to. Very difficult to learn, to implement in life.
Not only in business, but also in parenting.
Yeah,
same struggles.
Too much or not enough? It's a question we ask ourselves all the time. Did we push too hard, or did we push not hard enough? You never know.
I think you did just right. I'm sort of more like you in business. I'm always running and trying to do the chesed, trying to do more. But I have to say, because I'm maybe that nature, I always admire those businessmen who are very cold and sit back, and they don't run after the business, and somehow the business runs after them. They're not in a hurry to do anything. And it seems that everybody's running to raise their own price instead of waiting for them to come back, right? Why do I admire that? Because I actually look at that as sort of a businessman with bitachon. Maybe he's a smart businessman too. It could be a good strategy. But it seems to be that he's saying, listen, I'm sitting here. I'm not in a hurry. When the right price comes, I'll do the business. And when it doesn't, I'm not going to run after it. So I guess the point there is to say that God is going to give you the same thing, whether you stay till 6:30 or 7 or whatever it might be. Definitely going home to your wife and kids earlier rather than later is always a good piece of advice.
Yeah, I think the point in toiling it's very relevant. I think I feel that struggle so much as well. And I think on a personal level, I think that's where mentorship comes in. And you mentioned having these conversations with your chavrusa. I feel like that's where I often have to call a mentor and say, am I overexerting myself here? Because I do have that tendency, and the line is very blurry. The line is very blurry, and we always, like you said before, we're constantly students of bitachon. It's not something that we are ever going to master fully. We know the ideal, right? We've learned the book, but there's this spectrum, and we're always on somewhere in the spectrum. Some days a little bit more far ahead, some days a little bit less, and we're always trying to lean on the learning and bring it all back and saying, okay, I'm putting my effort. It's because Hashem has asked me to put in effort, but I'm trusting that you have the result. And, it's this constant dialogue that we are always engaged.
That has to be front of mind.
Exactly.
Keep asking the questions, keep checking. And especially in the realm of parenting, the answer you have today is not the answer in 5 years from now or 10 years from now in your role as a parent. So that it's dynamic.
Yeah. And it's going back to probably why it's also so helpful for couples to learn this together, because it does set the stage for these type of conversations as well, right? Thinking about parenting and about work, about business, about family life from a higher perspective jointly, because now we're looking at things from a different angle.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So you were asking what the next thing is, right? What's the next thing? So, even based on our short conversation today, I think it would be an idea for one of the next things might be to have a workbook to go with this.
What a nice idea.
I don't know if you know, but my wife's working on the workbook.
No. I had no idea, but I think that's a great idea. Yeah. You need to do the work in the workbook, right? Yeah. For the lessons to really penetrate. I think. 100%. Unless you're like Howard, where every book is a workbook and he's got, scribbles everywhere. And so, but for people who don't, I think it would be a great thing.
Stay tuned for that one.
Howard and Claire.
So wonderful to spend time with you on the Gate of Trust podcast. You all are an inspiration. You're doing great things. You continue to do great things. And I'm so impressed with the fact that from birth to child to soon to be an adult, it seems to be taking on a life of its own. And with the schus of supporting this great project, I know that you and your family will strengthen in bitachon and have all the blessings, b'gashmis and the ruchnias. And we should celebrate together in Yerushalayim very soon.
Amen.
Hamavorach Yavarach.
Howard and Claire are making a vital impact in the Jewish world and beyond in a quiet and humble way.
I was so amazed with all that they're doing, bringing the Gate of Trust to prisoners, soldiers, and so many others around the world.
How's the studying of the Gate of Trust going with your wife, Sandy, Felix?
We're still drinking coffee, but didn't get around to learning about trust together.
Same here, Felix, I hate to admit.
It's a good reminder to add it to our Pirkei Avos study over the summer, And Matt, I expect a better report next time.
You got it, Felix.
Thank you for listening to the Gate of Trust podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a rating, and share the podcast with the people you love. To access today's show notes, ask Matt and Felix a question, or suggest a Gate of Trust story to be featured on the show, visit gateoftrust.org/podcast.
You think you got it under control, you're on a roll, living it up, living your dreams. But when it all goes bust at the seams, then you scream and cry to the one